Okay, welcome back to our part 3 of our discussion about shape and figure ground. So when we last left off, we were talking about Ellsworth Kelly, a contemporary artist who I think has kind of a similar interest in shape and negative shape and kind of playing with that is Gary Hume. He does it in a more kind of maybe illustrative and a more representational type way, but also with this desire to kind of like try to tease us with in what ways he's being provocative. But fundamentally, he, like Ellsworth Kelly, is very much interested in painting being about organizing shape and doing it simply. Or another artist, a painter who I am a huge fan of, is Alex Katz. He, very much influenced by the abstract expressionists and influenced by painters like Ellsworth Kelly, but also wanted to bring representational imagery back into the language of painting, but he's doing it with a very much kind of like a Kelly kind of concern for shape and for painting. So it's a painting of a woman, but it's primarily a painting of a big, beautiful French ultramarine negative space shape. Or look at this cityscape piece that he made and how simply it's organized and how much the positive shape and the negative shape feel balanced to each other. So earlier I said that designers really like playing with positive and negative, and if you studied graphic design you would realize that thinking about positive and negative is very important in graphic design. Like the joke I made in part, because it helps you to really think about ways to save ink, which actually can be really useful because in the real world when you make a printed piece, how much ink it's going to use can make a huge difference. But also because by thinking about how you are organizing your space and how you're placing things in space, you really are thinking about design in its most fundamental form. Like all good design thinks about positive and negative shape and thinks about figure ground relationships. This particular ad campaign is probably one of the most famous examples of an ad campaign that was really thinking consciously about positive and negative, and how especially beautifully they do that on this think small part of the campaign. So but another point I want to make is that figure ground is not just for designers. Here are 3 paintings that really point out that painters in general are always thinking about positive and negative. It may not seem all that clear at first, but here's an example, right? When you go to see a Monet in person, one of the things you'll notice, one of the first things I noticed was how much when he's painting, let's say, a line of trees, how much he paints the trees by painting the sky into the tree, and by painting both the positive thing and the thing behind it back and forth into each other. So a lot of these marks in here are painting where he's painting the sky color back over the top of the tree. So he's positively putting the negative thing on top of the positive thing. And by doing that, it really shows also how he's really thinking about this whole composition as an organization of big, giant negative space shapes and how they relate to the big, giant positive shape. Or in this Diebenkorn here, you can also see that very kind of conscious thinking about the positive and negative. It's not just a painting of a pair of scissors and a lemon, it's also a painting about these big shapes that the organization between those two things creates, this kind of triangle shape in here or this large shape here at the bottom. Here are 3 more examples. All 3 of these paintings will probably come up again in this class, especially this photograph by Richard Avedon and especially this painting by John Singer Sargent. And in each of these, I want you to notice how conscious the artist is about the positive and negative. Especially in this Avedon, really look how carefully, this is not just a photograph of a woman in a dress, it's a photograph of beautifully thoughtful negative space shapes. Look at that shape right there and really think about how that was a conscious decision to create that shape. The whole thing is organized around the frame, and because it's organized in and around the frame, thinking about the frame, it's consciously thinking about the shapes it's creating in the negative space. So lastly, I think this is lastly, I want to say that figure ground is everywhere. It's really something that artists are thinking about all the time, and once you start to realize it, you realize that in paintings that we've already seen or paintings we're going to see many, many times in the future, that we are going to see positive and negative shape decisions everywhere. Okay, Done with that lecture. See you in a little bit.